This video is a review of the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo, now available for Xbox. And to start, a special thank you to FlightSim.com who helped set up this review, and the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo were sent to me free of charge by GamesBranding.com. Inside the box, obviously one yoke. It also comes with an instruction manual, 2 clamps, a USB cable, 1 Ethernet cable, the mounting plate with suction pad, and 1 Xbox hub to connect the Bravo throttle quadrant and Charlie rudder pedals as one system. Here's a look at the Xbox hub in the box it comes in, and a look all the way around the hub. The Honeycomb XPC is fully compatible with Xbox Series S and X, and now comes equipped with the Xbox Home button, Menu, Share, and View buttons, just like the ones found on an Xbox controller. Looking at the Alpha from the front, the grille has been slightly redesigned. The yoke still has the same great look and feel. Electrical and avionics switches, along with switches for lighting, are still present on the front left side of the grille. Another new feature of the XPC is the ignition switch is now spring-loaded. When the start position is selected and released, the switch will go back to both. On the back of the Alpha is a switch to select between PC or Xbox, the hub input, and USB-C output, along with an LED button to adjust the intensity of the red LED lights on the front of the Alpha grille. And for all those VATSIM users, on the back of the yoke is a perfectly placed push-to-talk switch. Continuing on with the yoke handles, looking at the top of the right handle, the red button by default is an autopilot disconnect, the white button changes view, and there's also an X, Y, and an A/B button for use with the Xbox to make selections just as you would with a controller. This switch can also be set up to be aileron trim. The left handle has a left bumper and right bumper button as you would find on the Xbox controller, which can also be used as elevator trim. There's also an 8-way hat switch and a white button to make whatever the heck you want it to be. Now that we've covered the Honeycomb Alpha flight controls, let's take a look at the Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant. Inside the Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant is the quadrant itself, an instruction manual, a booklet with partner offers to help you spend more money, a USB cable, 2 mounting brackets, a mounting plate, and throttle configurations for general aviation and commercial aircraft. The general aviation setup is installed. Inside the commercial box is 4 throttles, along with a speed brake and flap lever. The Bravo has an annunciator panel, 7 programmable switches, and a flight guidance panel with backlit buttons. There is a gear handle with indicator and flap lever, which will be covered shortly. By default, the Bravo is set up for general aviation twin-engine aircraft, but the levers can be changed out for 2 to 4-engine jet aircraft as well. The levers on the Bravo are very sturdy and also come equipped with a working go-around button. The Bravo also has a landing gear lever, which feels very solid for a flight simulator setup. There's also a landing gear indicator which shows 3 green when the gear is down and locked, and also red lights when the gear is in transit. If the aircraft you're flying doesn't have electric trim on the yoke, you can also use a manual trim wheel. On the top of the throttle quadrant, buttons and knobs to control the flight director and autopilot. This is a wonderful feature. It makes controlling the autopilot and flight director much easier than selecting buttons inside the virtual cockpit with a mouse. And suitable for most general aviation aircraft, a flap handle. Paying attention to detail and putting as many features as possible into this product, there's also a friction lock. Almost every airplane out there has one, so this is a nice feature for a flight simulator setup. There's the USB on the back of the unit that would plug into the PC or into the Xbox or Xbox hub. Those are most of the hardware features. Now it's time for the pros and cons of this product. And one of the biggest pros for a lot of people, the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo and the Charlie are now fully compatible with the Xbox. One thing I really like about this, the yoke feels great in your hand. It's very comfortable to hold. It also has a 180-degree range of motion. The switches are very sturdy and feel more like a switch on a real aircraft versus a switch on a toy. The switches on top of the yoke can be used to make selections on the Xbox, partially replacing the need to use a controller as much during simulator sessions. The hat switch can even be used to make selections on the Xbox home screen. And the trim switches are also very sturdy. As mentioned earlier, the yoke itself is very ergonomic. It's very easy to hold. However, something that will take a little bit of time to get used to, the range of travel is quite narrow and the elevator feel is on the heavier side. Until one gets used to this, it can lead to over-rotating on takeoff and porpoising during the landing flare. The tension in the elevator may feel light to some and heavy to others, but this does not take away from the immersion the Honeycomb Alpha can bring to a person's flight simulation experience. The aileron input is too light and should be more closely matched with the force required to move the elevator fore and aft. Less force required for elevator and more force required for aileron would help make this perfect. Another thing that would really knock this out of the park, having a similar type of system, but with the tension adjustment to make heavier or lighter controls for different aircraft. The Bravo throttle quadrant has so much versatility, and that is what makes it great. You can go from a single engine Cessna to a 4-engine Boeing 747 with one piece of equipment. And all the user has to do is swap out a few throttles, and it takes less than a minute to do so. The throttle controls, prop, and mixture levers are miniature versions of the real thing. All the throttles feel a little bit too small, unless you have the hands of a 5-year-old like the one in the video, and then they probably feel fine. But this is not a deal breaker because having smaller throttles is still better than using a mouse for power changes, but there is a solution. One of my subscribers and channel members suggested this website, prodesksim.com, where they make various throttles and combinations of throttles for different aircraft that fit onto the Honeycomb Bravo that more closely replicate the throttles in the real aircraft. All of these throttles look much more lifelike and realistic while still being functional. And I will leave a link in the description for prodesksim.com. The gear indicator and annunciator lights did not work when the unit was first set up. After spending time researching online, I went to the website, I went to the download section and downloaded the file from Microsoft Flight Simulator. And it still didn't work until I did this. Into the community folder, go to AFC Bridge, the bin folder, and then click on AFC Bridge. The Alpha nor the Bravo are hooked up right now, so I get this message. Normally no message appears, and then everything magically works. The annunciators are now on, and also the gear indicator is also working. Before finding a solution online to this problem, I had called Honeycomb for support, left a message. It's been a week and a half since that call, and I have yet to receive a callback from them. When trying the Alpha and Bravo on the Xbox, none of the annunciator panels or gear indication lights worked either. I did hook the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo to the Xbox through the Xbox hub. And you can see the Xbox hub to the left of the back of the Alpha right now. The Xbox hub was easy to hook up, but I found the instruction manual that came with the Xbox hub to be a little vague in terms of actually hooking the Xbox hub up. And there is a QR code at the bottom of the screen, so I thought, what the heck, I'll try that and see what happens. Maybe there'll be a nice picture to show everybody during the review, and this is what came up. This isn't a big issue, it can be fixed, but also let me know in the comments about tech support issues you've had with Honeycomb, good or bad. To end this section on a good note, one thing I really like is the autopilot and flight director panel. Right now, the vertical speed mode is selected. Watch what happens when the aircraft levels off and captures the altitude. Right now, vertical speed, although it's blurry, is lit up. To the left of that is altitude. Right there, it just flipped to altitude. So when the aircraft captures the altitude, it will also change the mode on the flight guidance panel. The location of the 7 programmable rocker switches makes them hard to get to with any throttle combination, but especially difficult when jet throttles are installed. There just isn't a lot of room between the thrust reverser levers and the rocker switches at high power settings. After using a joystick and throttle for years of flight simulation, it was hard to make the switch to a yoke and throttle setup. I kept finding myself wanting to hook the throttle and joystick back up, but in the 2 weeks I've had the Alpha and the Bravo installed, it's hard to even revert back to the old setup while flying airplanes. Having tactile feel of moving buttons and switches and actually being able to swing the gear with a gear handle does add to the immersion and makes it easier and more enjoyable to fly using the Alpha and Bravo in the simulator. My real life flying experience is over 8,000 hours of flight time over the last nearly 30 years. The Alpha does not have the feel of a real airplane, but not even a full motion level D simulator can perfectly replicate the feel of the real aircraft it represents. And that being said, over the last 2 weeks that I've used the Alpha and the Bravo, I absolutely love it. I would not part with it, and it does make flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator a lot easier and more fun. One more thing I love about the Bravo is being able to easily use differential power to make a tight turn by physically moving a throttle versus moving the view inside the virtual cockpit to manipulate the throttle with the mouse. If you're interested in the Alpha and the Bravo but don't have a place to mount it, here's a solution, wheelstandpro.com, who makes a stand specifically for the Alpha, Bravo, and the Charlie. I do not have this particular model, but I do have another version of Wheelstand Pro for a racing wheel, and it is a very solid and durable product. and I will add a link in the description for their website as well. Thank you for watching this review of the Honeycomb Alpha XPC and the Honeycomb Bravo. Also, help me thank FlightSim.com by visiting FlightSim.com. And also a big thank you to GamesBranding.com for supplying the Alpha and the Bravo to make this review.